All right, good morning, good morning, good morning. And I want to welcome everybody to our webinar today. The New England Canada Business Council is working with IBT Online to have I think, just a great content and great discussion today regarding New England exporters, that cross-border relationship that we have between the United States, specifically New England and Canada, and how we can really leverage today's online programs to grow your business in Canada. A little bit about NECBC, New England Canada Business Council. The mission of our council is to advance the understanding of business, political, and cultural issues between Canada and the United States, and to promote the entrepreneurial network of its members. So today, again, we have IBT Online, we have the U.S. Commercial Service, NECBC, and again, I'm John Sorensen, President of NECBC and the Consul General's Office of Canada. And again, a big thank you for our participants. A couple interesting points before I introduce our wonderful panelists. Canada and the US trade an average of $1.4 million in bilateral goods and services every single minute of every day. Now, do understand that was pre-COVID. So obviously things have changed and the border is right now only essential. Back and forth, not for non-essential. Canada, not all these other countries that we hear about in the news, but Canada is the United States' #1 export market. Again, a lot of people don't know that. I think it's really important to emphasize. 5 of the New England states, so all but Connecticut, but 5 of the New England states, Canada is the #1 trading partner. Again, a lot of people don't know that. And for many of us, like me, who go back and forth often pre-COVID, it is a great relationship and a welcoming relationship between the two countries. So today, we have wonderful panelists, as you can see up on your screen. Susanna Hardy, she's with IBT Offline, and again, she's the Chief Content Officer. Samantha Safici, she's the Senior Business Development Manager and supposedly this online expert, so we look forward to her presentation. Andrew Lawler is going to be very helpful today on our questions and answers, and he's Business Development Manager for IBT. You see me. Erin Donahue, who we work with very closely at the Canadian Consul General's Office. She's a Trade Commissioner. Thank you, Erin. And then Jim Paul, he's the Director of the Boston Office for U.S. Commercial Service. So a couple of quick notes before we start. A recording of the webinar will be sent out to all attendees. So again, thank you very much for registering today. We really appreciate it. And we encourage everybody to ask questions. So, all you have to do is drop them in your chat box. Andrew will assimilate them. And then we reserve time, hopefully 5, 10, 12 minutes at the end for a Q&A session. So I think I've introduced the great facts of the US and Canada. You could see our agenda here. Jim's going to lead us off with the US Commercial Services. We're then going to get with Erin on the Trade Commissioner Consul General. She's going to speak a little bit on trade as we discussed. She'll drill down a little bit more detail of what I provided. And then you see why do New England exporters need Canadian localized websites? And so IBT will bring us home on these online programs. And I learned a lot yesterday when we did a dry run, and I think you did too, right, Jim? So we're really looking forward to hearing a lot. So without further ado, and again, thank you all for being here today. I hope you're all cool in this hot, sticky weather. I'm going to start off with Jim Paul. Jim, are you ready?
Yes, I'm all set. Thank you very much, John, and also IBT Online for hosting this webinar. It's a pleasure to speak with everyone and look for your questions at the end. So as background on the U.S. Commercial Service, we are a division of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. Next slide, please. And our main role is to assist exporters with basically selling their products and or services overseas. And certainly the main emphasis is to create jobs, thereby through increasing international sales opportunities. We are just really one of many resources. There's tremendous resources that are on this webinar, but we do collaborate very closely. We're very fortunate here in New England, each of the 6 New England states. We collaborate with local city and state trade agencies. So here in Massachusetts, we collaborate very closely, for example, with the Massachusetts Export Center and the Massachusetts Office of International Trade and Investment, various associations, including the New England Canada Business Council, strategic partners, the foreign consulates, Canadian consulate for one. So we're very, happy to, basically collaborate as much as we can with everyone. Next slide, please. And so an overview of our agency. So I'm in the Boston office. We cover all of Massachusetts. And fortunately, we have other offices in each of the 6 New England states. So Middletown, Connecticut, Portland, Maine, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Providence, Rhode Island, and Montpelier, Vermont. And we have coverage throughout the US, covering all 50 states and US territories. We have 140 offices abroad in 75 different countries. And really, for the purpose of this webinar, we have offices in Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, and Calgary, but they do cover the entire country. And from our end, what we do for each of our offices in the US is we try to assist, whatever we could do as a filter, provide you all the resources, and then we will go ahead and connect you to overseas colleagues for on-the-ground assistance. The way our overseas offices are organized, we have rotating US officers. They supervise local staff that specialize in various industries and provide on-the-ground assistance in any various capacity to help you import your products into that market. Next slide, please. And so here's just an overview in terms of 4 main pillars in terms of how we assist organizations. We assist any type of counseling on the export end, but also the import end going into the market. Various types of market intelligence, our export.gov website. We have industry teams on top markets to export various products within certain industries, various markets. Business matchmaking, I'll discuss on the next slide, and also commercial diplomacy, where we help you ensure that you win projects overseas. Next slide. And so here's the main avenue where we usually do assist companies exporting to Canada and other markets. So during this COVID time, one of the most popular services is our international partner search. So our colleagues on the ground in Canada go ahead and reach out to various potential partners for you, distributors, end users, sales reps, joint venture partners, any type of partner. They would reach out on your behalf, and then they would also provide you a report on these contacts and introductions as well, and try to set up virtual meetings as well. The good news is that until September 30th, we've been able to waive our fees per the Office of Management and Budget for the service, as long as you're a small and medium-sized company. And I can still answer questions about our fee schedule later on. Typically, not COVID, we have on the ground in-country appointments that we could set up. And we could also set those services up now in Canada for next year as well at a reduced rate, 75% off. And we also assist companies with organizing, in-country seminars and receptions, trade shows. A couple of the key trade shows, for example, my colleagues in Canada advised me on, there's a Digital Global Markets Intelligent Manufacturing Conference taking place in early October. There's an Electricity Transformation Canada as well event. It's a main industry event for the renewable energy industry that will take place in November. And also the Canadian Nuclear Association. It's a main event for the civil nuclear industry, and that will take place in Ottawa in February. And that's it for now, but look forward to your questions later on. Thank you.
Great job, Jim. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Aaron is going to take us home, or in the middle of the pack here, and talk about trade. You ready? You need to unmute yourself. Try again. I can't hear you, unfortunately. Jim, can you hear Aaron?
No, I can't. Aaron, if you...
Unmuted now, I think.
Yay,
Yes,
there we
yes,
go.
I kept unmuting myself and then someone would mute me. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. All right, off to Aaron Donahue. Aaron, your show.
Thank you very much. And as I was saying while I was muted, it's always a pleasure to speak after Jim because it makes it much easier to explain who we are and what we do when we can say the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service is quite similar to the US Commercial Service, but in reverse. So next slide. So my department is part of Global Affairs Canada. We are in countries around, at embassies and consulates in countries around the world. Next slide. And we provide very similar services to Canadian exporters that the US Commercial Service provides to US exporters. We work with Canadians that are looking to come into New England and advise them on contacts and market information. As Jim mentioned, we often work on trade commissions and events. So very similar mission that we have, just supporting Canadian exporters. Next slide, please. And we can flip forward one more. I know most of the folks on this call, on this webinar, are US companies, so I will say there is one way that we work with, two ways actually that we work with US companies. First, I know many of you are here to learn about potentially setting up a website specifically for Canadian sales. Oftentimes when companies start thinking about selling into Canada and they get to be successful, it makes sense to open a Canadian office for a variety of reasons, whether it's supporting those customers or maybe you have some work that you need to have done locally. Our office actually assists US companies that are thinking about opening Canadian offices, and we can advise them on location, R&D tax credits, moving your employees across the border, which is more difficult now that it's closed, but still possible. But just to say, if that's something, those of you who are thinking about selling into Canada longer term, if that becomes part of your goals, it's something we can help with. We also work with larger US companies that are looking to source technologies or products from Canada. So next slide, please. And one more. So I was asked to talk a little bit about the US relationship, and John really teed it up well for me, that a lot of, I think it's more known among Canadian exporters that the US is the first market you have to go to, but I find US companies, when they think about going internationally, Canada can almost be an afterthought. So next slide, please. But as John mentioned, Canada is the US's biggest customer, and you're talking $721 billion in bilateral trade in 2019. It's a massive relationship, which right now the US actually has a trade surplus with Canada. Next slide. And this is actually a really great map just showing the importance of Canada as a trading partner with most of the US. This is just the dollar value of exports from each state. As John mentioned, I think right now it is 4 of the 6 New England states. Canada is their #1 market. The other 2, it's their second market. So an extremely important customer that really supports a lot of jobs and cross-border trade in the area. Next slide, please. And I always like this just because you think about the value of the trade just on a daily basis. 2 billion in goods and services, and as John mentioned, right now the border is closed to non-essential personnel. I should mention, however, that does not mean that it's closed to goods and services. Products are still going across the border with minimal disruption, and that's something our office works on, and I'm sure Jim's does as well. So if you ever encounter disruptions, we want to hear about it. But largely, that is not an issue. Goods are making it across the border. It's people right now in this time of COVID that we have to be a little bit more cautious about. Next slide. And so I probably should have mentioned our office here in Boston actually covers all of the New England states except Connecticut, which is why some of these numbers don't include Connecticut. But New England exported almost $7 billion to Canada in 2019, and that's not including Connecticut, which has major giants like Pratt Whitney and others that send a lot of goods back and forth across the border. And similarly, Canada exported $18.4 billion to New England. That number is a little bit unbalanced because of energy exports, but still, it's a really strong relationship. It's a really important market for New England. And I think one thing that, as you're thinking about going into Canada, we often say to Canadian exporters, it's an easy market because we share so much culturally. And I know we're going to be talking about some of the differences shortly, but they are much less extreme than when you go into other foreign markets. So it's a great test case to start with Canada before you look at other jurisdictions. And we say the same to Canadian exporters, that in many ways, New England is a logical fit, even when you're tackling multiple US markets. I'll leave it there. Happy to take any questions at the end.
Great. Thank you, Erin. Wonderful. Excellent. Okay. We're now going to get into a little bit more on the trade and the online aspect of it. and how you can communicate back and forth. And I believe, Samantha Sfici, you're going to kick us off.
Yes, that is right.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. So why do New England exporters need Canadian localized websites, aside from the fact that we have such a great trade relationship with Canada? So to start off, just a quick word on IBT Online. We've been in business since 2002, and our main goal is to help exporters be successful in their international markets, whether that's Canada or somewhere else like Germany, Mexico, Japan. And we do that through your online presence. So for us, that's through website localization and international online marketing. We have delivered for over 450 companies, have delivered over 1,500 online global programs in 20 plus languages in 40 plus countries. So it's a well-trodden road, and we have a wonderful team spanning all across the world to work on these projects, including Canada. So as we talk to companies, as we've been talking to companies throughout these past few months, a bit strange times, we've realized that they have 4 priorities. And the one that we'll be focusing on today is generating sales, exports, and business internationally, and specifically in Canada. But we have to talk about why these online tools that IBT Online works with, why they can be effective. And the reason is because of the online world. As of January 2020, more than 4.5 billion people across the internet, across the globe, are on the internet, which is about 60% of the world's population. And when you analyze that number and look at their behavior, the average amount of time spent on the internet is about 7 hours a day, and that's just an average. And then when you take a look at Canada specifically, over 35 million people, which is about 94% of Canadians, are online, and they're spending about almost 6 hours online daily. And that's just an average. So the takeaway to this slide is that everyone in Canada, so your customers, your prospects, your leads, your future distributors, suppliers, everyone is online and doing business online. And it is growing. So a little under 300 million people in the world, which is a few million under the population of the United States, came on last year, with Canada adding 947,000 to the online world, which is pretty impressive. And the growth certainly hasn't slowed because of COVID-19. If anything, it's gone up. And what are people doing online? They are communicating. So again, COVID-19 has massively increased that with remote working and the way that people are interacting with each other and the way that people are doing business with each other. With 65% of the Canadian population on social media and 96% of which access it on mobile devices, it's a tool that businesses in the US and around the world should definitely take advantage of, especially because the average time spent on social media per day is about 1 hour and 30 minutes in Canada. And all of this is really good news for both companies and exporters. It means that you know exactly where your clients and your prospects are and what they're doing. They're all online, they're all on social media, and they're using it for work purposes, with about 31% of internet users saying that they use social media for work, for business. So you can absolutely use this. And it's important to keep in mind that social media, online environment, it's not just for B2C companies, but it's for everyone. And I wanted to include this slide because so many New England companies are in that B2B space, and sometimes B2B companies don't pay enough attention to their online presence because they can suffer from what we call is like perfectly engineered syndrome. And this is when you think deep down that your product is so wonderful that it'll sell itself. And your product probably is phenomenal and it's probably great, but unfortunately now that companies aren't meeting face-to-face and the typical sales avenues like trade shows and trade missions are canceled or postponed until further notice, you need an online presence that will speak to how wonderful your products are, how wonderful your company is, and your online presence has to be keyword optimized so that people can actually find you. Also, it's important to keep in mind that when doing B2B business, you are still talking to people on the other side. Oh, sorry, back one slide, Susanna. They do their due diligence on your products and your company and your competitors, and it's supported by the numbers that were on the last slide. So there you go. 94% of B2B purchases are researched before contacting a sales rep or distributor. And over 70% of searches start with a generic search like CRM software or rather than searching for a specific brand. Also, I wanted to add that B2B e-commerce is more than 3 times the size of B2C e-commerce, so something that's a bit of a misconception. So it's really important that at all costs, no matter if you're B2B, B2C, B2G, that you have the right online tools and that you're portraying your company to your prospects in the right way. So taking a look at your online presence, we tend to divide online tools into 2 interrelated pieces. You have your website and your online marketing. There was a time where it was okay to just have a basic core US domestic website and make sure that your webmaster or your design company optimized it every now and then, kind of like an annual spring cleaning for the search engine. It was enough to publish a blog a year and have it ranked on page number 1, and you would be good to go. But unfortunately, now that everyone and their mother has a website, things are a bit more competitive on Google and on other search engines. So you still need a really good core domestic US website, and you still need SEO, but now SEO, or search engine optimization, has to be regularly checked and freshened up. So like I said, a blog a year just doesn't cut it. You need regular online marketing, like a structured social media outreach campaigns and structured Google ads to make sure you get found, you're understood, and you're easier to do business with, both in the US and internationally, like Canada. And the key thing to remember about the online world is that it is always searcher-centric. So your company might be producing the best widgets in the world, but if you're not communicating that correctly to search engines, you just simply won't be found. So for all things online, make sure to always put your customer in the center. And this is essentially what we mean when we talk about a localized presence. Whether that's for your website or your marketing or your e-commerce. And so the best way to illustrate kind of customer-centric, searcher-centric is to really understand how search engines are constructed. So we're going to take at the global leader, which is Google. So if you have a website for your company and you want to reach out to some prospects, say in Canada for this webinar, you might think that you can just add a couple of French language pages and surely search will do the rest. Or maybe you think your usenglish.com website will be sufficient to be found by Canadians. And unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. Search engines, and here we've taken Google as the example, but the same thing applies to other search engines like Yandex, Bing, Baidu, and even these days, YouTube, Amazon, Facebook, they're all used as search engines. All of these search engines are very searcher-centric. Google itself has 192 country and regional specific search engines. So if you add just a couple of additional pages to your website and they're not viewed as highly relevant to your target audience, Google will make it pretty much invisible to the Canadian market. So for example, in Canada, your searcher will be searching on google.ca with their local English and their local English terminology. And once they get to your website, they'll want to see measurements and metric and all these other things that we're going to cover throughout the webinar, which, so you have to think of search engines like Google as a lot of different country-specific localized search engines so that they come up with relevant pages and relevant websites for the Canadian market and internationally. And the next slide just shows a really practical example of how country-specific Googles produce results that are relevant to each specific user. Susanna, who is in the UK and on this webinar, and myself in Miami, we both have dogs that seem to love to play with their squeaky toys in the background whenever we have webinars. So we both search for squeakless dog toys. And logically, Google provided results that were relevant to each user. So I got things like Chewy.com, Amazon.com, and Yahoo with a really relevant piece of content. However, Susanna got things I've personally never heard of, like barksandbunnies.co.uk, timesforpaws.co.uk, and even something that I am familiar with, like Amazon, but amazon.co.uk. So the same search on different Google search engines gave us different results. So you have to think the same thing for your Canadian customers and your Canadian users. And keep in mind that translation and keyword research is only one aspect of having a localized site and having Google recognize that you are for that specific country. In order for search engines to find you, you need to make it as easy as possible for it to realize that your website is for a specific market. So for example, Google has a search index of hundreds of billions of pages that it needs to comb through to figure out what is most relevant to that specific searcher in a matter of milliseconds. So to make it easier on Google, you need to localize your website and your marketing. And this includes things like what you see here. So hosting within the target market, registering your domain names, making sure that it's compliant to their standards, among other factors that you see on this list. And on the next slide, you'll see how a really good example of if you have a properly localized website of how it can work. So here you have a website that's targeting prospects in Canada. So it's on a .ca, hosted in Canada with SEO for that local market. And as you can see, the results for 1 month for this B2B site shows that the majority of the traffic, so about 95%, is from Canada as a result of these localization practices. So it shows you how Google thinks that this website is very relevant to the Canadian market, and it's barely relevant for other English-speaking countries like US, which is right next door, and the United Kingdom. And the image to the right is just to show that it's a great example of how you can even target a specific area, a city, or a neighborhood. So if you think of this in the reverse, say you have a US website, make sure to take a look at your traffic, see how much traffic is coming from countries outside of the US. And I'm sure you'll see that the grand majority will be only from the US market, because Google recognizes that it's for your domestic US customers. So why do companies need localized websites? As a conclusion, the world is online. Everyone that you're trying to communicate with, so your clients, your prospects, your future employees, suppliers, distributors, they are all online, communicating with each other and wanting to do business online. So you have to prepare for what the new normal is. So a lot of webinars, a lot of online communications, and even if we do return to traveling, to trade shows, to trade missions, it'll just be an added bonus for you to have a localized presence for that specific market. And then in the meantime, a localized presence in marketing and through your website will help you get found, be understood, and be easy to do business with. And
awesome.
Now, yep, thank you.
Great. Good to know.
Right?
All right, and now we have Susanna from across the pond.
From across the pond. Thank you all. A real pleasure to be here today. Before I launch into some of the specifics of the Canadian online world, I just wondered if I could ask, all of you people, are you already doing business in Canada? Are you have a Canadian subsidiary? Are you thinking about it? Are you online already? Do you have ECommerce via distributor? So just click whichever one is relevant for you on the poll, and we'd love to collate those answers and see which one of you are via distributors, via online, and so on. And I can give you some results already. Some of you are thinking about it, but I think the majority of you are already doing some business online. Some business in Canada, particularly via distributors. So I am going to just give you 2 more seconds to put in your responses. and then I'm going to close the poll. Thank you very much. And this is the first of 3 polls that we're going to do. So we really appreciate your participation in that. So just starting out here, I thought I would highlight a case which might be familiar to Canadians. This is the case of the US retailer Target. It's actually become, one of those Harvard Business School cases of what not to do when you go international. Canadians were used to the concept of Target as a store. They knew it. They liked it. Target had done its research. They knew that the Canadian market wanted more Target stores out there. So they said, let's move into Canada. And I think the issue was that they really didn't quite get it right, in a sense. They rather sort of muffed up their launch, their research. They underestimated pretty well everything. They underestimated, for example, the geographic spread of Canada, the logistics that you need for that size of country. I know that they're all along, the majority are along that borderline, but still it is a very, very long border. So that was one aspect they had. They also underestimated how culturally diverse and linguistically diverse Canada is. It has 2 official languages, obviously English and French, but it also has a lot of other languages. So it's a very different market in that sense. Also, there are differences in terms of metrics versus imperial measurements, things like that. And one of the things that the Target launch really did badly was they didn't do their website. They just really couldn't be bothered with a Canadian website. So Canadians were encouraged to buy things on Target and to set up accounts and all that. And they had 2 choices. They either were redirected to the US Target website, in which case they said, oh, well, why did you bother? Or else they were directed to something called International Target, which was not a Canadian specific website either. And that international one, you could only pay in US dollars. It did not follow Canadian online regulatory. So everyone got big warning signs on their computers saying this is not a secure site, all kinds of things. In the end, Target, the CEO of Target actually came out and said, we recognize we've got this wrong. And they ended up writing down, $5.4 billion US dollars into that first launch. It's since relaunched, but that I think is one of those Target cases where you see someone not doing their homework, thinking that Canada was too similar to what they already had. And we know from what Aaron and Jim and John were saying earlier, Canada is a logical first place. It is a relatively easy market to get into. And the volume of trade is enormous, particularly with New England states. But it is not exactly the same. And you need to be cognizant of those differences. This is just a little difference in terms of that I'm going to show you now in terms of keywords. So if you're in the sports industry, you really need to know which whether you're going for sneakers or runners in Canada. If you get the wrong keyword, it's a really way to disadvantage yourself here. For example, if you're using the word only using the word runner or only using the word runner in Canada, you're missing out on a large portion of the population who actually look for that. Because runner, only about 31% of people actually look for the word, the other way around, sneaker in Canada. So you need to use the word runner. This becomes really important when you start doing marketing and any kind of Google ad campaigns, when Google will be charging you for each time someone clicks on it. So if you're not clicking on the right word, you got the wrong word, your word's wrong, you're going to have some expensive ad campaigns. So there's some of the big differences that I think we can talk about as well for Canadian websites is some of the variations you have in spelling, in vocabulary, in the keywords. These are these words that tell websites like search engines, how to reference you and how to rank you. And then the references, for example, the local testimonials, Canadian dollars versus US dollars, metric versus imperial, relevant case studies. all of these things which allow your Canadian audiences to really say, they do get us here, they do care. I think I can trust these people to buy from them, or at least to engage and discuss it. You need to build that trust that's so essential to the buyer's journey by saying your local user experience is valid. We know the Canadian market enough to make sure that we're getting it right for you, that we're not doing something what Target did and just being sort of complacent. Obviously, there's the French as well. And for a lot of American companies, or U.S. companies, they'd say, perhaps we should have a separate French-Canadian website as well, so if that's an important market for them. And the Canadian French is different from French, not just in terms of the vocabulary, but really there's a lot of differences in terms of the grammar, and obviously for the keywords. What's important for your website in Canada, French Canada, is different, very different from your website in France. If you want to learn more about this, by the way, we've got some blogs on our website which delve into this a bit more, and you can check that out if you want. It's free to download, obviously, from our website. One of the big differences as well between a US and a UK and a Canadian website is going to be digital compliance. Now, the US is moving towards stricter online compliance, led by California, which has put in sort of anti-spam legislation and privacy legislation. But Canada has, across the provinces, anti-spam legislation. And they are moving increasingly towards the European model called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, which really means that if your website in Canada does not conform to Canadian CASL, the anti-spam legislation, or does not have best practice in that, you will be very, very penalized, increasingly penalized by Google. And it's you have to think about it from your brand's perspective. Is it a good thing for your brand to have warning signs flashing up when people look at your website in Canada? Probably not. Google says it has a little yellow warning sign saying not secure. That is not a reassuring image to give to your Canadian prospects. Samantha spoke briefly about social media. I just wanted to emphasize Canadians are extremely sociable online. Actually, they interact with it in a way slightly different from the US perspective. Partly because they're more mobile-enabled markets. So more of them use mobile phones than in the USA. Mobile phone penetration rate is 94% in Canada, of which 90% are smartphones. So people are accessing websites all the time on their smartphones. And this has a very big impact as well when you're looking at doing websites in Canada. I don't know if it has to do with the distances or the way that they travel or what it is, but Canadians in business Canada looks at their websites via their phones much, much more than the US similar companies. We're very happy to drill down further into e-commerce if that's of interest to you in the Q&A, and we can go through that and look at some of the e-commerce activity. The e-commerce platforms that are most used, and anything else. But just to say that e-commerce is a very vibrant activity in Canada. 84% of those people online search online for and purchase online regularly. So worth thinking about them. And in terms of value, again, we're looking at about something like 45 billion US dollars. That's the B2C market. And as Samantha mentioned, the B2B market is roughly 3 times that size. So more or less $150 billion for e-commerce, B2B e-commerce in Canada. So now let's look at some of the ways that exporters use localized websites and what that means as well. But before I do, perhaps let's let's give you a chance to say again your polls. Do you want to learn more about localized websites? Is this something that you want to learn more about? Are you more interested in online marketing? Do you want to have more details on that? Obviously, put things in the question box, and we'll be happy to get back to you on that as well. And thank you very, very much for all those responses. We're very, very, wow. Okay, we have an overwhelming majority who would like to learn more about localized websites and online marketing, and we'll get back to you on that. I wanted to share with you quickly some examples of companies, U.S. companies. Most of them are in B2B, but some in B2C, who have now taken up Canadian websites as well. And I wanted to share this one. First of all, we're in the process of building their websites, including their US one, so don't look at it yet. Give it a week or two if you want to check it out. But I wanted to highlight it because this company decided to do this now, to take advantage of the pandemic and COVID, and saying, you know what, I can't go to trade shows. My competitors are confused, are at a loss. I'm going to go and invest on the online side because I know that way at least I can reach out and talk to my clients, and I can do prospecting. And so we're in the process of helping them do that. But it was a very explicit strategy from the company to really say, the vast majority, 3/4 of their business is done face-to-face. We can't do that anymore. What else can we do? How can we use our sales force? And I think that was a very illustrative point. Some other sort of big companies who have looked at major Canadian requests. I mean, so this is a company, New England Machinery. They make machines that make packaging. And US, and their first objective was, we need websites to reach out to our near neighbors, Canada and Mexico. And that really follows also that USMCA move. And they said, I wanted to really strengthen that core of our core clients and our core prospects of our near neighbors. And Canada is our most important international market. It merits its own website. We can't go on just ignoring this. We have to actually get on this. And the key reasons why they wanted these websites: brand awareness, lead generation, front of mind for existing clients, and visibility during the COVID time. I wanted also to mention this company here. It's a company, Rollright, and again, they've got a whole series of international websites, including Canada, which is one of their most important ones. And they make tarps for trucks. And it was one of the reasons that it was important to get a website out to their prospect markets was not just brand awareness, but also just knowledge. They have a very innovative technology. They say a lot of people don't even know that this exists. How do we spread the word? How do we educate our prospective clients that we actually have a service that exists that could be useful for them? Well, the best way to do that is online, and particularly for your international markets where you might not have that same brand recognition or historic. And they support all that with the online marketing, both paid and organic, across their major markets. And I just took a screenshot of the kind of calendar they will be looking at going forward this month of July, and color coding it in terms of, like, do we have to create new content? Do we put it in Facebook? Do we put it on LinkedIn? For all the different markets they're in. So it can be an act of, like, juggling to get these online marketing strategies across these different markets. And but once you get it all lined up, the strategy really pays off well. Quickly then, the last example I had for you, again, a U.S. company. This one is not in New England; it's in Michigan. But again, they said, our biggest markets for us is the ones that are closest, Canada and Mexico, and those were the first of their online websites that they wanted to do. So the first ones that they asked for was Canada and Mexico, and the Canadian one is actually in English, but it's there. And they said, again, just like the other example, that's such an important market for us. We need to show them and have that space and show them that we care about them, that we know about Canada, that we can reach out more into Canada. And so that was it. And I've left that little quote from Dave Yancho there. Again, if you wanted to read more about that, we have the case study on our website, and you can go and actually see him doing a video of it. So I'm going to turn over to Samantha to talk a little bit about what online global programs are, and then some takeaways, and hopefully also some questions from you. And I'd love to have some questions. Samantha.
Excellent. Thanks, Susanna. So the case studies, these companies that have created their localized online presence and international online marketing, what they've been participating in are these online global programs. And as you can see on the left, all the highlighted states are states that we have programs with. So they might have state funding for eligible companies. And as we saw by the case studies, there are multiple ways that a localized website and localized international online marketing can help you. So it can help you reach new markets, so specifically reach out to Canada or to other markets internationally. It can help you be found or be understood in your target markets. It can help you with B2B distributor recruitment, with distributor support. It can help you reach out and generate leads, grow your international sales. So depending on what your goals are in Canada and internationally, we can tip and tailor these programs accordingly. So to start off with our programs, we have options A and B, and these are our website delivery programs. So option A is a 2-market expansion with a limited scope, so 12 web pages and 2,000 words. So by the end of option A, you'll have 2 websites completely localized for your top 2 target markets, as you see here by one of our case studies. And these websites will be based off of your US site, but we will go through the whole localization process that we talked about in this webinar, including proper domain names, local hosting, SEO keyword research, industry-specific translators, regulatory compliance, and just so much more. So by having these websites, they'll help you be found, be understood, and be easier to do business with in your top 2 target markets. And one of those, of course, can be Canada in either English or French. And the second option is option B, and that's anything above and beyond the scope of work of option A. So maybe your company is looking for a full website redesign, or maybe you want just one country, but a much larger scope, so 50 pages and 30,000 words, for example. Then option B would be a better fit for you. And the budget for option B is just completely dependent on the scope of work. But equally for options A and B, there are grants available, like step funding, to use towards the cost of website localization. So make sure to get in touch with your economic development agency or with us, and we'll be able to help you with that process. Next is option C and E. So option C is international online marketing. So once you have that local online presence and you want to start drive traffic to your Canada website, to your Colombia website, then that's where international online marketing comes in. And we have a program that includes search engine marketing, social media marketing, and reporting and analytics on a monthly basis. So what we aim to do is we aim to be kind of like your in-house, out-house partner in marketing for your, both, it can be domestically, but also internationally. And then option E is for companies that are interested in e-commerce. So if you want a specific e-commerce platform on your own website for Canada or for another market, then we can create that localized e-commerce platform for a customer to go to your website, make the purchase in Portuguese, for example, and purchase the product in Reals and be able to do all of that on your own platform instead of going to your US website or something like Amazon or another distributor. So both options C and E are also eligible for step funding. So if you are qualified, then you can use the $6,000 towards either of those programs as well.
Samantha, can I interrupt you for a second and launch my last poll, please?
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to learn more about any of the online global programs? Would you like to learn more about the STEP grants that are available or anything like that? If so, just let us know or let any of the organizers know, and I'm sure we can look into that for you. Thank you very, very much for all those replies. That's going to be, very, very encouraging. We're delighted to see all that. Thank you very much. I'm going to leave it just a second more before I close it and hand back to Samantha, but thank you again, and we appreciate that. It's lovely to see. Thank you. Great. Samantha.
Excellent. So in conclusion for this webinar, before we get into Q&A, the online world is localized, and that goes for the world and especially for Canada, as we saw in all the numbers in the beginning of the presentation. So in order to be found, be understood, and be easier to do business with, please take a look at your online presence. Please take a look at your online marketing, and really try to make it as searcher-centric, as customer-centric as possible, so you can be super effective in Canada and internationally. And then the second to last slide, there are a ton of really great resources available. All of these people on this webinar, please get in touch with them. Jim, Aaron, John, they are just a wealth of information about Canada, New England relationship, about how to export into Canada. They can help get you there. And please look to us for anything related to online. So websites, international online marketing, please take advantage, and hopefully we can make you as successful as possible in Canada and around the world.
Awesome. Great. Thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. There's our contact information below. And Andrew, I believe we're going to do a little Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Well, first off, I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us with this fantastic team, Aaron, Jim, John, on the IBT team here as well. It's been such a wonderful webinar, and of course, the audience, thank you so much for joining us. I know that we have just a bit of time here that we want to use for some of the questions that you've been asking us throughout this entire presentation. We've got quite a few responses here, so I just want to preface by saying we're going to get to as many as we can today in this webinar, and if we don't, don't worry. We're going to be getting to you guys tomorrow, in the coming days, in an individual email, so we get those questions answered for you. Just to kick things off, I think we've got a question here that maybe Aaron, you can help us out with. Can your office over there, can your office help us with distributor searches?
That would more likely be Jim's office that would be able to help with that, and some of his colleagues that are based in Canada.
Okay, wonderful. Jim, if you wanted to touch on that.
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. You see how closely we both work together? We constantly refer clients to each other. So yes, we absolutely can, through our 4 offices, Calgary, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal. They could certainly assist identifying the best distributors or any other partner for the market.
Awesome. Wonderful answer. Well, thank you very much, Jim. Jim, maybe just another question right back for you is, we've got a question. Can I find out more about the STEP grants from your offices at the U.S. Commercial Services?
Sure, a great question. And for the STEP grant, it does depend on each state. So for each of our 6 New England states, anyone could go ahead and contact me. I would be happy to refer you to whichever state you might be in New England or outside New England. And they could provide you a lot more information on the STEP grant. And I know the process here in Massachusetts, so I could refer you as well, any questions I don't know. But I know for Massachusetts, there's gonna be a STEP grant webinar for Massachusetts companies on September 16th, and I can always provide more details.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Jim. And just to look at, looks like one for the IBT team. Question is maybe for Samantha. Can IBT do the content creation for online marketing, or should we leave this to our Canadian distributor?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we can absolutely create content for you for the Canadian market, for your social media marketing, for your web presence. But we welcome your Canadian distributor to work with us. They're the people who are directly in touch with your customers in Canada. So we always love to work with distributors. We love to hear their input. We love for them to look over the content. So that's definitely a relationship that we can work with. But yes, we can create content.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Samantha. And just moving along here, it looks like we have a question for maybe yourself, John. Did we have an individual asking from a New England perspective? Does the NECBC believe that the USMCA will benefit New England exporters to Canada?
Absolutely, unequivocally. We were very active in the USMCA, and we were in contact with all our representatives in the United States Congress, and we wrote a couple letters to the president as well. And we do believe that many of the tariffs obviously were removed. Unfortunately, recently aluminum came rearing its ugly head last week. But there's a little bit better on the issues like poultry and eggs and other areas of trade. So the answer is yes, unequivocally, much better. And Jim, you want to add anything there too?
No, we definitely agree, John. We're very excited, and in terms of taking advantage of it, again, we could always refer to our colleagues in Canada in terms of implementation as well. But I'll turn it over to Aaron.
No, I mean, really, I would echo what everyone has already said, that, it's something that we strongly advocated for, and we think it'll benefit people and exporters on both sides of the border. And that's really the whole goal, is to have it be mutually beneficial.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then maybe another question for you, John, at the NECBC. Looks like, does the NECBC have any suggestions about mitigating currency fluctuation between Canadian dollars and US dollars?
You want us to get involved with monetary issues? Wow, have to dust off the old econ finance degree here. I know Jim's laughing. Yeah, the loony, the toonie. Obviously my suggestion is, I'll put a little humor in here. The suggestion is, once the border is open, go to Canada. Your money's worth a lot more right now up in Canada. So buy goods and services up in Canada. No, I think, again, monetary policy is by the respective feds on both sides of the border. We don't have any influence on that. What we do try to influence is our mission statement. Again, collaboration, trade, working together towards common goals and objectives. However, we do have a working relationship with TD Bank, and just recently did a seminar with them about 6 weeks ago. And their chief economist spoke on a lot of those related issues. And again, the fluctuations between the two currencies, the fluctuations of trade and unemployment, et cetera, et cetera. So stay tuned. We're going to do a lot more in the financial world, and then also fintech world in the coming months. So
wonderful. Thanks so much, John. And again, to the audience, if there's any other questions that relate to the USMCA or the NECBC, please send in your questions late, and we will get to those as soon as we can for you in the coming days. So just to wrap things up, and before I send it off to Susanna, I do just want to say that we are going to be sending out a quick survey at the end of this webinar. As soon as it closes out, it's just going to ask you a few questions. If you could fill that out, that would be wonderful. But with that being said, over to you, Susanna.
Well, I just wanted to really thank all of our partners, Aaron, Jim, John. Thank you all so much for participating, for helping out, and for joining us today to talk to New England exporters. Really exciting and wonderful for that. And then, of course, my colleagues, Samantha and Andrew, thank you all. You will be all receiving a copy of the slide deck, and the webinar presentation in about 2 days' time, I think. But most of all, a major thank you to all the New England exporters who joined us today, and we look forward to seeing you online, offline trading, and hopefully in and around Canada and New England. With that, as Andrew said, please also fill out our little tiny survey. That'd be helpful. Take care, be well, stay safe, and happy trading. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much, everyone.